We know that children learn two ways in the formative years. The first way they learn is by imitation, usually of one or both parents. And many of our adult habit patterns and characteristics come from straight imitation of one of our parents in our formative years. For instance, we find that adults who are early risers, who get up at 5:30 or 6 every morning whether they need to or not, almost invariably the father in the family was an early riser. Many parents have had the experience of shouting at one of their children and hearing their own mother or their own father's voice come out of their mouth. And sometimes when your children grow up, you hear them shout back at you, and they shout back in your voice and in your words. Many of the characteristics we say, like father, like son, like mother, like daughter, it's very, very true. Many of our beliefs, many of our attitudes, many of our values as adults were simply imitated totally and without change from the way our parents thought and acted and behaved during our formative years. We look upon our parents as gods. They are the primary role models for us as children, and we look to them to learn how to walk, to talk, to think, to react, and everything. The other way that children learn in the formative years is by moving from discomfort toward comfort. What Freud called the pleasure-pain principle. We move away from what is painful toward what is pleasurable. We move away from what is uncomfortable toward what is more comfortable. And these two ways, imitation and moving from discomfort toward comfort, are the key ways that we learn throughout life. Of all the discomforts that a child can suffer, the most traumatic of all is the withdrawal or the threat of the withdrawal of love and approval from the parent. If the parent threatens to withdraw love or withholds love, the child actually suffers psychic trauma. There is nothing more terrifying to a child than to think that his or her mommy or daddy does not love them. Children need love so desperately that if parents use the threat of the withdrawal of love, what we call love deprivation or love withheld, children will very soon lose their natural spontaneity, their natural fearlessness, and they will do everything possible to conform to the wishes or the demands of their mommy and daddy so as not to suffer that incredibly terrifying discomfort of loss of love. Children need that love so badly that they will do anything to get it. And when parents mistakenly use love withdrawal or love deprivation to manipulate their children's behavior, they find a very interesting thing. It works very well. But the great tragedy is that it causes psychic trauma and deep psychological scars that then manifest themselves in adult lives and create deficiencies that adults spend the rest of their lives trying to compensate for. Let me explain. Very early in life, usually by the age of 2 to 2.5, as the result of mistakes that parents make in upbringing, especially destructive criticism and physical punishment, children begin to learn negative habit patterns which then carry over into adult life. Very severe punishment, very severe traumatic events can cause children to carry negative habit patterns into adult life that actually require psychotherapy and counseling to overcome. But the basic negative habit patterns that children learn and children develop that we are all subject to in our society because of the way we've been raised are, first of all, the inhibitive negative habit pattern. Now, an inhibitive negative habit pattern is characterized by the words, "I can't," and is caused when children are subjected to punishment and are told over and over again, "Don't. Get away from there. Stop that. Leave it alone. Put that down. Don't touch that. How many times have I told you? Leave that alone." When the child, who is naturally curious and spontaneous and interested and who wants to touch and taste and feel and get into things, doesn't understand that the parent is being inconvenienced or understand that they are breaking something or damaging something that causes expense to the parent, all the child understands is that whenever I try to touch or taste or smell or feel or get into something new or different, my mommy or daddy get angry. They don't love me, they spank me, they criticize me, they punish me. It must be because I'm too small. It must be because I'm incompetent, I'm incapable. I can't. Later on, when you are in the grip of a negative habit pattern, because all negative habit patterns are manifested physically, you can feel them in the physical body, and the inhibitive negative habit pattern is manifested down the front part of the body. The first place you feel the inhibitive negative habit pattern is in the solar plexus, when your solar plexus tightens up. and your stomach starts going queasy, and sometimes your heart rate speeds up and your respiratory rate speeds up. Sometimes your throat gets tense. Sometimes you get inflamed sinuses or headaches in the front part of the head. Sometimes your bladder releases and you have to run to the bathroom. The inhibitive negative habit pattern causes us an irrational feeling of fear and anxiety and trembling that is not based on external stimuli. For instance, many people are uneasy about public speaking. If you ask them to get up and speak in front of a group, very often they will go through all of the traumatic physical manifestations of the inhibitive negative habit pattern. The inhibitive negative habit pattern leads very early in life to what we call the fear of failure. And the fear of failure is the greatest single obstacle to success in adult life. The fear of failure is what holds more people back from exploring their full potential than any other negative habit pattern or any other factor in human personality. This fear of failure is what arises inside of us whenever we are given an opportunity to risk our time or our money or our emotion. We feel immediately, I can't. Many of us whose parents were brought up during the Depression remember our parents saying over and over again at a young age, I can't afford it. And we grow up as adults, and very often whenever we are exposed to the opportunity or the need to spend something or make a buying decision, we have exactly that same inhibitive negative habit pattern. I can't afford it. It tightens up. We feel it in the stomach. Even though we can quite easily afford it, even though our earnings are far higher than our parents ever were, even though we never went through a depression, very often as adults we are still suffering from this. The second type of negative habit pattern that we are heir to is what we call the compulsive negative habit pattern. And the compulsive negative habit pattern is characterized by the words, I have to, and is learned by the child when the child is made the recipient or the victim of what we call conditional love. When the parents make it clear to the child that he or she is not loved in and of themselves, but they are only loved when they do what the parent approves of. When the child is told over and over again, you'd better or else. If you don't, you're going to get it. Now look what you've done. You're in big trouble now. Or when the child does something or doesn't do something and the parents use the giving of love or the withholding of love as a tool to manipulate the child's behavior. The child subjected to this does not understand what is going on. The child is pure sensation, and the child only thinks, I am of no worth and value in and of myself. I am not safe and I am not secure, and my mommy and daddy don't love me unless I am doing what they approve of. Therefore, I have to win my mommy's and daddy's approval. I have to do what they want me to do. I have to please them. I have to conform to what they expect of me. This compulsive negative habit pattern leads very early in life to what we call the fear of rejection. The fear of rejection is demonstrated or manifested in an adult life by a preoccupation or an obsession with what other people think. We get to the point where we think continually, how are other people going to react? What will they say? What will they do? What did they mean by that? Why did they look at me like that? This compulsive negative habit pattern has its ultimate manifestation in type A behavior. The individual who suffers from true type A behavior is a person who is striving continually to try to gain the approval of their superiors in order to compensate for the fact that they never got the unconditional approval of their parents. And throughout our lives, these two negative habit patterns, the inhibitive, I can't, and the compulsive, I have to. And then the very worst of all, which is the double negative habit pattern, I can't, but I have to. I have to, but I can't. We feel driven to perform, and we feel afraid to try. And we're caught in a negative bind. And these two negative habit patterns, I think, account for most of the failure that adults experience throughout the course of their lives. I feel that more adults have been held back from realizing their full potential as human beings by these two fears than by all the other fears combined in our psychological lexicon.